Once the sequel movies came out, you can't talk about cloning now, especially in a post original trilogy era, without saying this has got to be leading up to clone Palpatine. But you have shows so far, it looks like all that they are designed to do is to galactically mansplain the cloning of Palpatine. You're not telling anything new and exciting. You're filling in for some bad choices you made in a movie that everyone hated.
How long must this go on? For how many years will we be receiving retcons for the Rise of Skywalker?
Well, it sounds to me like that's all we're going to get going forward, because nobody's going to say, okay, we're taking these movies out of canon, right? We're going to get the Acolyte, which is going to go back into a prequel version of this. I mean, who knows what the Acolyte's going to give us, to be honest. But it's like, no, you guys have demonstrated no ability to tell a good story. And so it doesn't matter what time frame you put it in, it's still going to be trash. But we have to conform everything else coming out of our studios to meet that message.
The folks who are working on these shows don't like Star Wars. And what we mean when we say that is they would like to see Star Wars be what they want it to be. They do not appreciate George Lucas's Star Wars. Even when they say they do, no. And so it needs to be changed. It needs to be rearranged for the sake of a modern audience. For the sake of an audience that we're going to attract by creating a safer space around Star Wars. So we're willing to scrap our existing fan base, the fan base that's carried the IP through decades. We're creating new Star Wars. We're turning Star Wars into what it should always have been, but certainly what we want it to be now. And we're welcoming in this modern audience. Well, the modern audience hasn't materialized. It's fictitious. That's how we get to where we are today.
It just seems so counterproductive.
It's not a good business decision. But if your priority is not business, if your priority is social constructivism, so it's worth any price. It's getting your hands on the pillars of pop culture and tearing them down and possibly rebuilding them in your own image.
That's the problem with revolutionaries, though, is that history has taught us that they're really good at blowing things up, but they do a really bad job of rebuilding. One of the problems that I think that is going on with a lot of these people in Hollywood and Lucasfilm specifically is there's a lot of people who are not creative and they're not talented and they know it and they're mad about it. So this is why they all latch onto these other IP, and all they have is their anger and whatever message that they're trying to push. They throw together a few mediocre things within the genre or within that IP, but it's really just message heavy, and then they sell it. Well, it ultimately dies. But there's also this whole thing in Hollywood where you have this grift going on where it's like, now I have a credit, right? I have a credit in my resume. I was writer or director or producer on this thing. And it's like, oh, and forget about the fact that it failed miserably, but I have this credit, right? Oh, well, you've worked on a show before. Oh, and you check these boxes, right? Because now we have these rules about that. Okay, why don't you come work on our show? And then you go and you kill that show, and then you kill another show. Pretty soon, everybody's like, oh, they're a seasoned Hollywood producer. And it's like, no, they're a serial killer is what they are. Because if the ultimate goal is to push your message to the people, if people aren't listening to you anymore, how are they going to get your message? So, and that's kind of where Star Wars is headed. Eventually, it's going to be so heavy, message heavy, top heavy with the politics of like current day politics. Like, I don't mind talking about the taxation of trade routes. So and I don't have to collect all the, the MSNBC anchor action figures. It's just going to kill it. And then where are you at? Well, now you got to go find the next IP. And then you have a bunch of executive producer serial killers wandering around Hollywood, killing everything.
There's a bitterness in the creatives. It's not enough to pack it away. No, there's a bitterness that drives them that, no, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this for everyone. The ego, the narcissism, the bitterness. And then there's a hypocrisy at the very top, having paid a hefty price for the IP, wanting to change it, but happily jumping on board for things like anniversaries and merchandise. It's problematic. We don't support it. 20th anniversary? Yeah, let's get some merch out. There's the hypocrisy at the top. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. No, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I mean, that's pretty much par for the course. It's in all things. It's not just Star Wars. It's everything right now in 2024. I start with politics and sports and education and entertainment and music, and it's everything. And it's absurd. It's to the point of absurdity, and it's like anytime it's the boy who cries wolf scenario. The more and more and more that you shout it, the less and less people are likely to believe it. And so then when it actually happens, people don't believe you at all, and it's too late. And so you devalue the thing about being these victim advocacy push your message people is you ultimately devalue the victims, because when somebody actually comes across a real victim who's saying, hey, I'm a victim, you're like, yeah, just like all those other a-holes in Hollywood, right? And you keep walking and you're like, oh, maybe that person was actually a victim, but it's too late, because we've been so desensitized to this crying foul that comes across in all these venues. It's like we almost have the opposite intended reaction. The people are like, you should care about this, and you're like, well, as a matter of fact, I don't. Because you're such a shrill and dishonest political actor, that my first response now is that when your mouth opens, I'm assuming you're lying to me, right? And so, what does that do with someone who's actually telling you the truth about something, right? Now they have a much higher bar to clear for legitimacy. They're fighting an uphill battle for actual recognition, and we've done them a disservice, right? And then the people who actually need help for whatever it is in their situation don't get it, because we already gave it the office, man. We've been given since whenever, right? Like we've been fixing it, and we've been throwing money at it, and we've been voting for it, we've been doing all this stuff, right? And it's like, okay, so it's either worked or it didn't, but I don't trust you, because like I've been hearing this message for years now. And maybe the first time that when the first new grift pops up, the tree people of Endor are aggrieved. And you're like, oh, we should support the tree people of Endor, right? Like, oh, send them money, and we'll put them first in line to admission to the Imperial Academy or whatever. But it's like, at some point, you're going to be like, okay, well, we've been doing that for 35, 40 years. What's going on over there on Endor? Like, how are you guys managing your resources, and what's going on there? Like, oh, we're still oppressed. You're like, okay, why? And then of course, then that is an unpleasant question that gets asked, and nobody has an answer for it. So then you get called an anti-tree people person or whatever, right? And so they just, it's just it becomes it all becomes self-defeating, and it's like eventually we're going to have a whole lot of unemployed, hateful people, and it's like you say they'll do it at any cost. Well, eventually the cost is going to be there'll be nothing left, and then what do we do? Maybe we have to start over again. I don't know. It's just not a good look, man. It's not a good. It doesn't portend well for the franchise.
All right, we've mentioned the Acolyte, the conclusion to the High Republic. So after 3 phases, moving closer and closer to the prequels, the Acolyte will close the High Republic and build a bridge to the prequels. What do you see coming?
I think that we're at a very we hang in the balance here. Your work on the High Republic has been magnificent. Just like to plug that. If you haven't watched those videos, please go back and do so. They're fantastic. And so we have to brace ourselves for some really egregious dreck, self-righteous ideologues at Celebration going, yes, yes. We got a bunch of people who know nothing about Star Wars. Well, there's no evil in Star Wars. Have you watched the original trilogy? Pretty clear, but this is what we're getting, and there's all kinds of weird stuff. The direction that this is going in is, if it's anything like the High Republic, it's going to be a terrible show. If this is the last show we get this year after the Bad Batch, which has not been good, it's it's a serviceable child's cartoon, but it really doesn't do anything for Star Wars. It's not really helping. Kind of like we talked about, all it is it's trying to bolster and, yeah, prop up the sequel trilogy, which is not a good goal. And then the execution of that is it feels to me like resistance, in the sense that it's just a kid show that doesn't really make any sense. It's got some explosions. They dangle the keys and they bring people back that we like, Ventress and Rex and others, but it really doesn't achieve anything. And there will be plenty of people like us who will also be impacted by the Acolyte and saying this is the line has now been crossed. The Acolyte is going to be the red line moment. It's going to be ugly for Disney / Lucasfilm / Disney Plus. It'll be the end of Disney Plus, I think. There's people who have been signed up for a long time at the $7.99 rate, or they're buying the bundle, with Hulu and ESPN and all that stuff. They're going to despair. They're just going to walk away. People are buying less. People, diehard Star Wars people like ourselves, are just buying less and less Star Wars. We're just over it. There's nothing new that is igniting or maintaining the passion. Occasionally we might buy, something that relates to a character we like, or to, a movie that we like, and maybe some anniversary figures and things like that. Like you say, the cynical cash grab. But it's all dying. And if you don't come out with something really magnificent and spectacular immediately after the Acolyte, this could be the end by the end of July, maybe early August. Okay? And at that point, then we have nothing until, at least nothing officially scheduled until sometime in 2025. It's totally kill it.
And with these critiques in mind, when we speak out, when we call out the poor quality, the agenda in modern Star Wars, in Disney era Star Wars, we're accused of gatekeeping. Yeah, to an extent. If you come in with the intention of destroying something that I like, yeah, there's going to be a level of gatekeeping there. Our ultimate concern is great Star Wars. When Disney has managed to put out good Star Wars, very rare cases, we've been there to support it. You said before we started recording, you made a comment about the labels, the terms, the criticisms, the things that are thrown at us. What say you?
The loudest voices of accusation generally feels like that they are the ones trying to distract you from what it is they're doing. Nowadays, if someone comes to you with any kind of question, and it's like a legitimate question, it's not even like a criticism, like, oh, that was stupid. It's like a legitimate question, like, hey, why did you make this choice with this character in this particular show? Because it feels like whatever. Okay, they just immediately jump to some kind of over the top attack on your character. These ad hominem attacks that they do, and it's like, why don't you just answer my question? I might not agree with you, but at least I can say, oh, okay, well, I can see where you're coming from. Well, shut up, racist. And you're like, wait a minute. I just had a question about your TV show. So now there's no conversation happening, and now all you're doing is you're creating a divide, and now you're polarizing, you're ussing and theming everything, and then you're killing any goodwill or any potential that you might be able to win some people over to your creative vision. And some of the recent videos on the channel, we've seen a lot of, well, what do you care? And it's like, okay, well, I would turn that back. Why don't you care? And if you don't care, why are you commenting on our videos? But clearly, you took time out of your day, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much. We love our subscribers and our viewers. Otherwise, why are you wasting your time? Right? So that's it's a false statement to begin with.
It is, and it's never followed with any suggestions how to better spend our time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, like, at least follow it up with like, why do you care about Star Wars, man? Why don't you go outside and mow your lawn or read a book or something? You're like, okay, well, that's probably also a noble pursuit, and I should probably mow my lawn because it's that time of year again. But they also don't come back with anything like, why do you spend so much time worrying about Star Wars? You should be reading Shakespeare. Also a worthy pursuit. The other things, though, gatekeeping, I also don't appreciate that term because it gets thrown around in such a way that has a lot of negativity surrounding it. But there's types of gatekeeping that I think are highly beneficial, and a lot of them revolve around quality control. Quality control is a type of gatekeeping. Okay, if you want to try and define gatekeeping, if I am a maker of a particular product, and I have to source materials to make the thing that I make, and I have to have a certain level of standard, or I set a certain level of standard for myself, then not allowing subpar materials into my manufacturing pipeline is a form of gatekeeping, right? It's quality control, right? And we can take that then and move that over to Star Wars. Well, if I want to gatekeep, air quotes, um, or do quality control for Star Wars, then I want only good writers, and I want only good special effects houses, and I want only good costume designers, et cetera, involved in my products, because I want my products to be of the highest quality. That's okay gatekeeping. Now, there's negative gatekeeping, bad gatekeeping, and that generally falls outside of the walls or outside of production. And one of the types of gatekeeping that I can't stand is the fans of an IP or something, a fan of anything, or it doesn't have to be an IP, it's just a fan of anything, who get mad at other fans for being fans. And I see them in Star Wars, and I see them in all these other IPs, and it's like, that really makes me mad, because one of the things, for example, that you and I, ruminate on a lot is what's going to happen to Star Wars. What's going to happen with the future? What's going to happen? Are there going to be fans? Are there young people coming up and being exposed to these things and falling in love with these things? And are they going to carry them forward beyond us? Just be happy that we're all Star Wars fans here. And some of this is being weaponized, like you say, the shill factor is heavy, in that kind of gatekeeping. But we've also seen on the production side some bad examples of gatekeeping, like Gene Roddenberry, for example. In the later years of his involvement in Star Trek, like when Next Generation was coming out, and when after the motion picture and things like that, his gatekeeping, which initially created, the IP and his involvement in it, and like his complete and total control over it, which created an amazing thing, ultimately wound up choking it out and not allowing for innovation. And before everybody in the back starts shouting about how the Acolyte is going to be innovation, I just please don't. Okay, that's not innovation. Andor is innovation. Rogue One is innovation in the Star Wars universe. Okay, the prequels were innovation in the Star Wars universe. The original Clone Wars cartoon was innovation, both versions. But this crap is just crap, right? So don't tell me that like somehow this is making Star Wars better through innovation. It's just not. But if someone were like, let's say George Lucas didn't sell Star Wars, and he just hung on to it until he was like 95. Okay, at some point there, the Star Wars is not going to be good anymore, because it's like, if you have to get it cleared through George, and George has to have his diapers changed or whatever, like, it's not going to be good Star Wars, or it's just never going to get made. So again, I understand where gatekeeping can become a hindrance to the creative process, but if it's in the context of quality, it's never bad.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, and along those lines, that standard of quality and offering reviews and offering my perspectives on Star Wars, I guess in a sense I'm offering feedback. I want to engage with other fans. I want to clearly state my positions, provide evidence for the claims that I make, or the statements, the assertions that I make in the videos. I want to encourage people to vote with their dollars. This is the way I see it. Do you see it the same way? If so, we start to create a community, and ultimately the hope is that this feedback, these opinions, reach someone who matters. But that's no longer the way the world works, right? I'm not naive. That feedback's not going to be taken seriously. At this point, it's more about creating that community and having catharsis, as you said, when you're dealing with another party whose mind will not be changed, and there's agenda over quality. Well, that's a dead end. That said, we also get attacked a lot for being exclusionary. So the very point that you just raised could be tweaked, turned around, and thrown back at us. What I mean by that is you're saying you hate when fans go after other fans. But we've been attacked many, many times. We're very clearly on the record as disliking the sequels and pretty much everything that surrounds them. D+ series are being used to justify, to retcon the sequels, to provide excuses, explanations retroactively. We find that to be nonsense. So in saying that, we get accused, well, you're going after fans, right? They're people who love the sequels, and for you making these videos and you having these opinions, isn't that fans attacking fans?
Have we specifically called out anyone or any fan group on this channel? I don't think so. We have said, like you mentioned, there's things that we're not fans of in the modern Disney Star Wars lexicon. I don't think we're here to try and convince people to not like Star Wars, and we want there to be more Star Wars. We want there to be longevity for Star Wars. We want there to be this, connection, between generations of fans, and we want it to keep going and go into perpetuity, and we want it, to be this thing. And so our criticism is not about people liking Star Wars. Our criticism is about not good Star Wars. Now, you can make an argument, and I think I got in an unenviable position of having to defend something once. Very early on in this channel, I think we were having a show where it's like everybody gets a movie and they have to defend it, and I'm like, "What do you mean, Last Jedi?" Right? But anyway, you can make an argument for the elements in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, right? Elements of them. I'm not going to defend them in total, but there's elements in those films that are brilliant and fantastic, and I think that in our honest reviews of those films that we've done on this channel, I have called them out, talked about, some of the visual aspects and some of the things, just that were really, really well done. Okay. And if you're a big fan of those movies, that's great. I'm glad you're here. But the question I have, and it's just, this is not, again, it's not, I'm not after any particular fan group, but the question I have is, what are the numbers? Are there more sequel fans than other Star Wars fans? And that's a question, right? Because
you know the answer to that. You know the answer to that question,
right? Well, but again, for these people that are after us about like, oh, you're hating on fans. I'm not hating on fans. What I'm saying is that if you genuinely and with honesty come to the data, right, and you look at whether it's box office receipts, views on the streaming service, merchandise sales, look at all the announced projects that have been canceled based on some of these, like characters like the Rey movie, it shows me that even if we take the politics out of it, right, and if we just go back to pure capitalist action, the money is not being spent on the new stuff. Okay? So that would show me that either one, there aren't enough new fans injecting, new fans of the new stuff, injecting their money into this ecosystem to offset people like us who are removing our money from the ecosystem because we're not happy with it, right? So that would indicate to me that there aren't really a lot of fans because it has not been a positive offset, right? They're losing money, possibly several billion in the hole, even after a decade and a half of owning it and all the investments and all the box office receipts and all the stuff that they are losing money. They are bleeding on Star Wars. So that would show to me that the people who supported it up until the purchase, right, and then extended that goodwill to Disney through the first couple of films, right, those people are backing away, and there's nothing there to replace them in that vacuum. If sequel era Disney was so good, how come the Star Cruiser thing died? Okay. If sequel era Disney is so good, how come you had to announce a film based on Rey and then cancel it like 6 weeks later? If all this stuff is so great, where's the money? Because if you want to take everybody at their word, which we shouldn't, right? We should always move into the world with a healthy dose of skepticism. But if all the people down there at Disney are saying, well, this is what the people want, it's not that this is what I want. This is that the people want, right? They want the crowds want this, then the masses, right? They want more girl boss and more bestest ever and all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. So then you went and made it. If your first statement is true, that this is what the people want, and then you gave the people what they wanted, that should equal profit, right? Piles of cash. But instead, all they can fall back on is the fans aren't smart enough, right? That's one I've heard, right? Like, you don't get it, you're not smart enough, you're some kind of ist or phobe, right? Or it was Russian bots on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever that was giving us a bad score. Like it's something, right? It's always blamed on something else. But the truth the truth is in the dollars. And so if somebody comes to Star Wars, this is my caveat, right? So I'm not mad at people who like the sequel trilogy. Great, if you like it, that's great. I am in clubs, Star Wars clubs and groups, and we meet and we talk, and I know plenty of people in these groups that are, shills, for lack of a better word. Anything that falls out of Disney's ass, they're all about it. Give me a fork, right? And they love it all. And I see them post on the socials, and they're just like, oh my God, why haven't we seen animation, from Star Wars so good as the last episode of Bad Batch? I'm like, did you watch the same episode I watched? Because I had a different experience. That's fine. What it is we've got people who are liking Star Wars, and I'm okay with that. And we hang out together. We talk about Star Wars, and I talk about the things I like. They talk about the things they like, and it's great. We have a community of fans. Fine. It's when they attack me about stuff, that's when I get ugly. But what I'm hopeful for is that those people who might have not experienced Star Wars in any other meaningful way, and they say, okay, I went and saw, my aunt or uncle or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever, like they took me to this Star Wars movie and it was kind of fun. And like, oh, okay, great. Well, welcome. How about you go watch these other films too, right? Kind of, get the whole flavor, right? My hope is that the people who are introduced to Star Wars through the modern stuff, they all went and watched other stuff, the original trilogy, prequel or sequel trilogy, prequel trilogy, doesn't matter. They went and watched everything, right? And became Star Wars fans, right? That this might have been the gateway, right? Their initial introduction was the cute little green puppet, right? And then they're like, oh, well, hey, did you know there's another cute little green puppet named Yoda, and he's in The Empire Strikes Back, and he's a badass? Like, you should go watch that too. Oh yeah, oh okay. All right, so then they go see the finest Star Wars ever made, and they're like, yes, right. And we hope they're converted, But I mean, really, my thing about the new stuff is that my hope is that it winds up being an introduction or a gateway for other people to get into the genre, to get into the IP, and to go and discover the things that I love about it, and hopefully they'll love that too. Right? And that's really that's the thing. And we'll complain on here all the time, whatever about stuff, but it's because we care about the product. We want it to last. And we want it to be good, and we want it to honor what's come before. And that's really it. And that's why we make these videos. That's why we spend so much time talking about it. That's why we want you, our listeners, to join us in this conversation, and be a part of this, because, we all love it. All the people that listen to our videos care about Star Wars too on some level, right? They might not agree with all of our opinions, and that's okay. But that's why we're here, right? We're here to talk about Star Wars. We're here to love on Star Wars. And unfortunately, over the last decade, Star Wars groups of Star Wars people have gone from being fan clubs to being more of like group therapy sessions. And that's the thing that makes me sad about Star Wars is that we used to get together and talk about how much we loved it, and now we're getting together, we're talking about that wasn't really that good, and this bothers me, and and it's like I want to get back to the praise. I want to get back to the unrestrained excitement for Star Wars, and we've spent time trying to highlight the good, and we've gone and found things from the past. We've dug up stuff to try and shed light on, like the radio drama for A New Hope. We've tried to call out these great things in the lore that people might not necessarily be aware of, and we want to expose them to other good Star Wars things. But for people who claim that we're just here to trash Star Wars, or that we're just here to be a rage bait, clicky bait thing, that's just nonsense.
Yeah, it sure is. And when you're attacked or you're labeled, and again, no victimization. I create this channel, I publish these videos, I expect and I deserve a certain amount of pushback and criticism. What I typically ask for when the words hater, gatekeeper get thrown around, why do you like it? Let's engage. And from there, if the person is willing, sometimes it goes to a very good place. There was a recent thread, started out in a very negative place, but kind of came around. So, granted, the people who are leaving the comments have no obligation to engage, but if you want to attack and label, it's like, hey, I'm on the record with my video, here are my reasons. Challenge me. Change my mind. Rarely can I get, can I create a discussion. When it does happen, it's beautiful. And that's when you realize that, hey, we're fans. And in not making an argument, it's not, I immediately write the person off as like, well, they're not a true Star Wars fan. And again, they have no obligation to do so. But as you said, if you took the time to watch the video and leave a comment, there must be something about this that matters. There's something about this that matters to you. So if you disagree, this is the time. This is the forum. Let's hear it. Let's have it. Let's have other fans chime in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a one-on-one discussion. Let's get some other perspectives. It's also not a popularity contest. In many cases, I've found myself being the only one arguing in a particular direction. Does it mean that I'm wrong? Maybe in some cases it did. In some cases, my mind was changed. But discussion and debate are always preferable to the attacks and the labeling, going off topic, making it personal. In this climate, many people feel threatened just for you having a contrary opinion. And so to go all the way back to the question I asked you, in taking stances against things we don't like, well, isn't that fans attacking fans? No. If you like something and you're secure in it, my opinion against it can't really change your enjoyment of it. I'm glad you think I wield that kind of power on the internet. Believe me, it's not my opinions that are causing fans to leave the Star Wars circle.
Yeah, we don't have that many subscribers yet. Yeah, no, I'm actually a little jealous as of late, because I used to be the target of all of the hate in the comments, but now you're getting your fair share, as they say. So I don't know. I like being the heel for a bit, but most people just don't do that. I mean, and this is, and you and I have talked about this on many occasions. People haven't been taught how to critically think and reasonably argue anything. Like, speech and debate is dead. Critical thinking is dead. And so people just have visceral reactions to things. Everything is emotional now. Nothing is intellectual. And so I love Star Wars, okay, great. I love sequel Star Wars. I feel good for this, and you don't like it, which makes me feel bad, which means I hate you. And it's like, okay, that's a very emotional reaction to it. to your point, explain to me why you love it so much, and then maybe you can convince me to love it, right? This is the thing that I don't get about that kind of attack is it's not just us and our channel and us having these conversations or whatever. Um, there is a dialogue that can be had with the viewers, listeners, whatever you want to call them, subscribers, etc. If you feel so strongly about something that we've said to drop a comment like that, um, don't you think that the next step should be trying to get us to understand where you're coming from and potentially change our minds? You post something, people are like, "If you die, loser, hate your guts." It's like, okay, so you've clearly stated that you do not agree with my opinion here, but nobody's trying to change minds. Nobody's trying to influence people through intellectual arguments. They're only doing it through emotional blackmail. And we were talking about the political climate. Instead of saying to someone who may or may not vote for you, here's why you should vote for me. And here's my plan, here's my policy, all stuff. And if someone says, screw you, I don't like that policy. Okay, well, what is it about this policy that you don't like? Well, it raises taxes, or it sends money overseas or whatever, right? Okay, well, let's talk about that. Well, here's why this happens, right? You have a dialogue about it. But instead now you say, and you don't, most of the time you don't even lay out your policies. You just say, vote for me or you're a racist. You're like, well, I don't want anybody to think I'm a racist, so I better vote for this guy, right? You're afraid that you're going to get called out in the public square for being something that you're not because you didn't do a certain thing, right? And it's the same thing with this whole Star Wars fandom kind of a deal. Instead of just dividing us into groups that hate each other, we all talk about why we feel differently, maybe get some common ground, maybe a few minds get changed, maybe people change sides or whatever. But just like in politics, Disney is happy with all of us eating each other. The government is happy with the various political factions in this country fighting with each other and eating each other. Lucasfilm is kind of in the same boat, right? They would rather you and I be starting fires on the internet, and then the shill army coming after us and burning us down or whatever, than people actively and objectively assessing their performance with Star Wars. Does a divide and conquer thing.
Another popular argument, subjectivity. Yeah, there's a degree, there's a level of subjectivity that goes into every review. I do my best to be as objective as possible. And that is why I look for evidence and I conduct research. With a healthy IP, with a thriving Star Wars, Disney would be racing to invest money. I don't see Disney's numbers. I don't have access to their data. But as I shop and I see no Star Wars toys or Star Wars toys on clearance, I'm able to engage with fewer and fewer people because they checked out, they're not involved anymore. That's empirical evidence. There's objectivity in that. So to come into the comments, that's your opinion, man. There's a lot of evidence to back it up. There are objective metrics that support these air quotes opinions.
Absolutely. And the something that we've also learned in recent decades is the power of the internet mob. Okay. There's a bunch of people who will passionately defend something or make claims about things because it's not hard to type it out in a few sentences and post it on the internet. What is more difficult is actually supporting the thing that you're typing about, right? Getting off of your ass, going outside, buying things, if that's what it means, attending meetings or events or rallies or protests or whatever, or going and voting, or you picket, driving the extra hour and a half so you can go to the vegan market or whatever it might be. It's really easy for you to sit there on your ass. You're still getting everything delivered to your house with Amazon, even though you're railing about the billionaires and you don't understand that connection. It's easy for people to do that, and these are the people who crop dust our notes with the "you suck, you're a hater" thing. It's like it's easy for them to do that. But there aren't, like you say, the empirical evidence is there.
But I don't want to be proven right as much as we just want Star Wars to survive and get better.
That would be nice.
Our conversation has come to an end. As always, thank you, Sean.
I ain't in this for your revolution, princess. I'm in it for the money.
Check out Galactic Initiative for honest takes on Star Wars.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.